It's time to talk about everybody's favourite dwarf friend, Bruenor. Now, Bruenor is primarily a tank, I get that, but what about damage? We want to do damage. Tanking is boring. Let's damage everything. Here is my solo Bruenor build. You can use this in co-op as well, but this is for my dwarf damage enthusiast. Let's go. I'm working on a Dritz build for Dark Alliance. If there's anything else you'd like me to cover for this game, do let me know in the comments down below. Now let's get into it. Bruenor has the unique ability of pretty much being able to block or parry most attacks from any direction. I don't know if this is a hidden mechanic or if it just feels that way, but I always feel like I'm able to parry attacks better with Bruenor. Could be something to do with the shield, I'm not really sure. Now, outside of this, Bruenor is technically a tank. That makes sense. You know, he's got a high constitution, all that nonsense. He can taunt, you can have everything attack you, everything like that, but where's the fun in playing like that, especially solo? So I have tried to turn Bruenor into the best DPS character possible, and I've had pretty good results. Basically, the key focus here is on stacking our strength rather than constitution for the extra damage. We're also using some of our moves, being Storming Quake, to trigger a cold damage buff on our weapon constantly so that we get a little bit of extra damage in all of our attacks, and using Bruenor's two damage abilities, the Anvil of Clangeddin and the Whirlwind, which are actually really overpowered damage abilities compared to the rest of his kit. Both of these are super valuable to use, and we want to use them as much as possible. Bruenor also has a really good gear set, which increases his damage overall. There are plenty of ways to turn Bruenor into a DPS god. So basically what we're going to be doing is parrying, damaging, using our abilities, moving around the battlefield, and healing ourselves for free without the use of potions. I'm going to teach you how to do all of this, and we're going to start with abilities. The two abilities, as mentioned, is the Anvil of Clangeddin, which is a massive magic anvil that drops in front of Bruenor and just deals damage to everyone around him. It deals physical and fire damage, so you can get a burning effect on most of the enemies it hits. You want to use this in the middle of as many enemies as possible. It will destroy most enemies, and by the time the effect ends, most enemies will be dead unless it's a boss or some big elite enemy. We're also going to use Whirlwind, which is a spinning attack. It's kind of like a weaker version of Wolfgar's ultimate, although it does a really high amount of damage. The thing to note here is that you can combine it with the Storming Quake ability to have the cold damage buff on your weapon, use Whirlwind, and you will shred through enemies just with this one attack. It's very powerful. Just to touch on Bruenor's ultimate briefly, I don't use this very often as a solo player because it does give you a ton of resistances. It's mainly a get out of jail free card if you do just need some resistances to survive a little bit longer in combat, though it's not super valuable because we're focused on damage here, and resistances doesn't matter too much when you can heal for free with Warsong. Now, the other two abilities that Bruenor has being the Taunt and the Battlehammer Brew. The Taunt is really useless in my opinion. I understand that it has some other effects that it applies and it makes you a little bit have better resistances, but there is no point in tanking in this game when every character can really handle some damage themselves, and by the time that, you know, if they're dealing enough damage to you, it kills you, you've probably done something wrong before that. The Battlehammer Brew ability does give you regeneration, so it does heal you. However, you can heal for free with a move, which we will talk about right now as we talk about moves. The Warsong ability heals you during combat. It will also heal your allies. You don't need to use potions to heal. I highly recommend you just use Warsong and only use potions if you absolutely need to. It also has a chance to apply Thorns and Vampiric, so you can get even more health back, but this will basically just give you a heal for free that you can use at any time, even out of combat. I'm also using Storming Quake a lot, which is that cold damage buff that we talked about. I try to keep this up as often as possible. As soon as it goes down, I bring this up always. I also like the Lunging Axe ability, which is a decent damage dealing attack. It also applies a stamina sapped effect to the enemies, so they will run out of stamina very often, so you can get off a few executions. It's just a good damage dealer that does an extra effect as well. Now, for your attributes, our key focus is going to be on strength for the physical damage buff that you get from strength. Pretty much overall, this is the key thing. Now, next, it's a pretty even split between constitution and intelligence, with a slightly higher in constitution for the stamina and stamina regen. Bruenor does use a lot of stamina with his abilities. Most of his attacks only use a little bit of his overall stamina. However, the big attacks like Storming Quake and Warsong and Lunging Axe and those abilities that you're going to use will use a lot of your overall maximum stamina. So we want to make sure we have enough stamina here, but you can also put a few points into intelligence for the elemental effects like the cold on your weapon or the burning from the magic anvil. For your feats, the main focus for the feats is going to be the hammer line for the offensive skills. You want to grab everything in this line as soon as you can. There isn't really anything to talk about here, just pick them all up. Next, I would recommend to stack the forge line that you can get endurance and keen mind. Endurance for the stamina bonus and the cooldown reduction that you get from keen mind will allow you to spam the anvil ability more often. With any remaining points, you can put them into the anvil line to increase your HP and armor. If you choose to do this, it will just give you a bit more resistances. However, it's less important because we're not highly focused on this, and when you can heal for free without the use of a potion, it doesn't matter too much if you take a little bit of damage in every fight. Now, for your potions, HP potion, obviously, we're going to also stack the stamina potion because we are using a lot of our stamina. You will use this pretty often. I find I use this in between fights very regularly, especially when I'm heading into an elite fight. I use a stamina potion with Bruenor. I'm also using the elixir of concentration for the cooldown reduction. This is really just so that you can spam Anvil and Whirlwind as much as possible. I would recommend to upgrade this and use it whenever you need it in before you go into a hard fight. As a quick side note, there is no time limit to any of the dungeons. You can, if you know there's going to be a hard fight coming up, you can just stand there and wait for your cooldowns to reset. I do that very often. The last that we are using is the firebomb for the status effect. Now, primarily the firebomb only does a little bit of damage. It's not super valuable to use, but we are mainly using this because if you hit an enemy with both of the firebombs that you have, it will trigger the burning effect, and this is super useful for bosses with Bruenor. Because of our low damage overall, every effect that you can put onto an enemy is just more damage that you can pump out, so that's why we're using that here. It's time to gear up, and the one set that you want to focus on and get as soon as possible is the Keeper of Secrets. You want to get this to 5 out of 8 as soon as possible, regardless of if you're using common gear, because it gives you a 10% bonus to damage overall. This is a huge bonus for Bruenor. When your damage is so low, it just makes a really nice difference to Bruenor's damage. For the remaining 3 points, it's a little bit up to you, and I'm not 100% certain into the best option here. I've been toying around with the Battle Ranger set, which reflects damage back to the attacker, as I have a legendary shield that fits this set, but I think the better option may be to either go 8 out of 8 of Keeper of Secrets or 3 of 8 of the Durga Infiltrator, which gives you a plus 10 to armor penetration, although you can get more than plus 10 of armor penetration just from a secondary stat on a piece of gear. Though if you do have a full set of armor penetration, please let me know in the comments below if the 8 out of 8 Anvil ability for this is worth it. I haven't been able to get the enough gear to be able to test this myself, though I'm really interested to know if it is worth it. Now, for some tips for playing Bruenor, block and parry often, as mentioned earlier. You want to make sure you're avoiding damage as much as possible, and parrying and the parry follow-up is a really good damage dealer for Bruenor, so trying to trigger this as much as you can is a good thing to do. Keep your status effects up, make sure you have the cold on your weapon, you're doing the other things, maybe you've got Vampiric or Thorns active. The cold damage can freeze lock enemies, which makes it so much easier. When you are running around in combat, focus on the archers and the mage dealers first. They are super annoying for Bruenor, they interrupt your attacks often, and I find these to be the most annoying enemies to take out, so I always focus these first, then deal with the pesky melee range people, because you can just parry them and take them out pretty comfortably. Use Warsong instead of healing. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but this is super important. Only use your potions when you absolutely need to. You don't have to worry about it too much. Just use them if you absolutely need to. And the last tip is, if you're looking for more Dark Alliance content, check out my Canterbury build, which goes through a sniper build where you can one-shot enemies with your charged shot. Please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Twitch, where I stream 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Australian night times. Hope to see you guys there in the next stream. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.